I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil.
All right. Yeah, so how's everything in Jersey?
Everything's good. Yeah, nothing crazy. I think my house got hit by a golf ball earlier, and I went out searching for it, but couldn't find it. I'm like across the street from a country club, and I get fucking drilled by golf balls. And I get really, yeah. It's kind of bullshit because it's not like I have a house it's across the street. It's not like on the fucking golf course. Yeah. And it's really annoying that it's just open season over here. But what are you gonna do? Because I remember when I got the house, it was like the guy who had the house before me had like all of these golf balls in the shed, and I was like, oh, he likes to golf, right? It's like, no, those are years. Those are like 15 years worth of golf balls that he's just collected from getting drilled. Shit. But anyway,
has it caused any damage at all?
Not to me. No. Okay. Well, it smashed a pot before, but I don't know. One smashed a pot, and I don't know how. It was like under a gazebo. I have no idea how that happened. It like defied the laws of physics, this golf ball. But that's it. Anyway, how's LA? Have you been shooting a film? Should we talk about that at all?
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute.
That's way more exciting
than golf balls. We were shooting last night. It's cool. So we're shooting a short horror film, and my friend, for the last few weeks, he's been doing sound for a film. So he invited some of the crew members to come help us out. He invited a girl who does makeup, a couple of production assistants, and one or two other people. And he's friends with an actor who's done a lot of short films and some commercials. So we thought this was just gonna be like a dumb little short that we just shot, with a couple of friends on a weekend. But this ended up becoming kind of a bigger thing. So we had to get food and make sure everybody was like accommodated and everything, and have dressing rooms and everything like that. So it ended up kind of being a bigger thing. But it was fun.
When you say short film, how long are we talking?
This one was originally going to be 6 to 7 minutes long, but
okay.
Yeah, but we don't want to shoot for, because we originally told people we were going to just shoot for one night, and now we're saying 2 nights. But then after last night, we didn't even get to shoot all the stuff that we wanted to shoot. So we're like, okay, we can only shoot for one more night. What changes can we make to the script? So this probably ended up being like 2 or 3 minutes long. But we're pretty excited about it. It was cool. We didn't even shoot for that long. We started shooting around 8:30-ish, and then we stopped around 12:30. But it just takes almost like 10-15 minutes per just to move the camera, even if it takes place in the same room. But just but since the camera's moved, now the shadow is moving on a different side of the face, so we have to adjust the lighting, sort of thing. So
that's that shit that like you don't even, like, a layperson. Even myself, I'm obviously a layperson, but I'm really into movies, right? Like I write what I call pocket reviews about them. So I love movies, and I love kind of the behind the scenes stuff, but that's the kind of stuff like people don't even realize that goes into it. That I forget who said it. It might've been Seth Rogen, who's kind of like a cuck, but whatever. He said it's a miracle that any movie ever gets made. And like that's just seems very true when you hear stuff that you were shooting. So how long was your total shoot? And how much? And then that was 3 minutes.
Yeah. It only had to be maybe only for 2 minutes.
My cat decided to hairball right now.
Oh no!
Oh buddy! Oh no! Oh no! It's not a hairball; it's puke. Yeah, I got to handle this. So you can either talk or we can cut this. But
it's okay. I can just pause the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and we're back. One of my cats decided to yak 10 minutes in, or not even. I don't know how many minutes in we're in, but that's taken care of. He just perpetually destroys my carpets, and now he's going to be meowing for food because he's puked up his whole dinner. But that's all right. All right.
Bummer.
So we're talking about movie making and.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like there were so many things, and overall things went very smoothly. Like everybody got along really well. My friend and I, we communicated really well. So it was like, it was a really fun, smooth night. Where there were definitely a few moments where like, oh shit, I forgot in this shot, he's supposed to be carrying this thing, but in the other shot he's not. Fuck. So it's like we have to cut around
like,
that, or
yeah. It's like those cinema sins, right? Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah, exactly.
it's always fun.
But
Oh, the total thing's it's 3 minutes long.
well, that's the thing. We're probably gonna end up being. It's probably gonna end up being a 2 or 3 minute long short. But we'll see. I mean, it's hard to say right now because the deadline that we're trying to get into the Screamfest Film Festival, and that is the deadline for that. The absolute final deadline is August 15th. So we still have another night of shooting, and then we have to do all the sound editing. We got to do the score, color correction, and mastering and all that stuff. So
Damn.
yeah. So I hope we can get to that deadline.
So wait, for what festival?
Screamfest.
Oh, Screamfest. Nice.
Yeah,
Where is that in LA?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where we're at. So hopefully we'll have some more updates on that in the coming weeks, and hopefully my friend and I will have some fun things to talk about on the show. So that was fun working on that one.
So that's it. So you're telling me that you've made the next Reservoir Dogs.
That's I think it'll be a little bit better.
Which is a segue.
Yeah.
Which is a segue into our topic for today, where Joe and I are doing something original that two straight dudes have never done before, and that's discuss Quentin Tarantino.
Yes, exactly. We're gonna get all of our sources from Wikipedia. We thought we'd just gonna read the whole article.
We're just gonna read you the Wikipedia page of Quentin Tarantino.
So it says here, I'll start from the top. Quentin Tarantino is an American filmmaker who's most famous for, no, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, no. So one of the reasons why we want to talk about Tarantino is because he's one of those living artists whose like his work and his mentality and his aesthetic and his general attitude so embodies what the Reckless Muse is all about. This attitude of like, just go for it, push the boundaries. If people don't like your work, then tell them to fuck off. Don't be afraid of controversy. Change things. Constantly ask yourself, how can I do this differently? And learn from the past too. Like there's so much great art from the past that we can all learn from. And we're living in this era where we're kind of like, oh, this thing's offensive these days. We can't show that anymore. And Tarantino's like, no, there's a lot of great stuff back then. Like let's keep that stuff fresh and alive.
Oh yeah, I mean he's I think a film buff who doesn't even do it justice. I mean, he studies it. He studies his favorite genres. He's kind of like, a pure embodiment of just a passionate artist, because he didn't go to like USC film school or anything like that, or NYU film school. I'm assuming they have a film school. He literally worked in a video store, in a video rental store. It's like one of the guys who worked behind the counter and would give his like wall of recommendations and would just talk film with people. And then he started like making movies, started making incredible movies that like, well, I mean, we're going to get into all of this. This episode is really just devoted to him. It might not even be our only episode about him, but he started making movies that like, has he made do you want to get into it? Has he made a bad movie?
I don't think
where
so.
Where he directed it, because right now I'm just kind of talking ones he directed, not necessarily wrote. Which also the ones I can think of are all like, so I rate movies, and my scale, whatever, doesn't matter. Like if you read my reviews, you'll get an idea for it. But like, even what he considers his worst movie, I think would be Death Proof. Yeah. And I think I watched that recently. I think maybe like 2 months ago. And like, I really like Death Proof. It's not a perfect movie. It's not Pulp Fiction or Kill Bill or Reservoir Dogs, but I think it's a really good movie for something that really just gets kind of like tossed to the side when people discuss his oeuvre. But anyway, we can talk about, we can get more into more specifics later. If we want to discuss more like about his style and his so you brought up, but let's talk about his attitude, because that's something I love. Obviously he has lots of viral moments. I think there's a YouTube clip, I put it in our drive, where it's him just like, I forget what the title is, might be like Tarantino Rex TV show hosts or whatever, and he and I love it because it's so refreshing. He doesn't like play the game or whatever. The famous one is where someone, I don't know her name, but someone's like, why all the violence? It's like, because it's so much fun, Jan. Like, it's just because it's like, and that is so pure to me. Like, he's just having fun.
Yeah.
And he creates a fantastic product at the same time, but he's having fun and doing what he loves. I think that's something that like every artist really aspires to do, to make millions of dollars doing what they love. I mean, what's more pure than that?
Right. Yeah, that's the there's something so pure about that, like you said, where it's just about film, and it's all and it's not just about filmmaking, but it's also about making film cool. So he was recently on Joe Rogan, and I highly recommend anyone who's either a film fan, Tarantino fan, obviously, but also anybody who's just interested in kind of like, you know, just like diving into the creative process of a big talent like him, to check it out. But he was talking about how back when he first started making films, like in the late 80s and early 90s, there was this dearth of movies. Because in the 80s, it was very simplistic. It was like good guys versus bad guys. There were not very many mainstream films where it was like, let's get into like the more grimy gray areas, and let's you know, the good guy is still very morally corrupt. And so for him, what I love about that, it was, you know, about what he did, it was like, no, like I want to see the movies that I want to see, like that's what I want to make. And so he saw a gap in the market, and then so he just went out to fill that gap, because I think too often nowadays, and I think even just, you know, since, you know, art has become so commoditized, when something becomes popular, then you have a whole bunch of people who just mimic that style. But Tarantino's like, no, there's not enough of this style, so I'm going to go out there and fill that void.
Yeah, and he talks about that. I think it's the same Rogan episode. I'm assuming he's been on there more than once, but where after Pulp Fiction, a bunch of movies like Pulp Fiction came out, and you know, Rogan asked him basically, what's your opinion on this? He's like, well, one, they're not as good as mine, so that's probably, you know, it's definitely true. So that's one part of it, and the other is like, well, one of his favorite subgenres are spaghetti westerns, which are different than a regular western. And of course, you know, Sergio Leone is the Italian director who kind of spearheaded that movement, and that genre, that subgenre. So Tarantino looks at that as like a source of pride. Like, I created a subgenre. These characters who, it's a lot about the dialogue, pop culture references. I think he uses the term like hangout movies. Like, it's just, you know, in Pulp Fiction, let's say it's Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson driving in the car talking about what do they call a cheeseburger or a quarter pounder in France. And they're talking about TV shows and music, kind of like what people would talk about, like any of us would really talk about. And obviously the hyper violence is a big part of them. That's also part of spaghetti westerns. The last part, or at least for the time, and the last part would be like, now what I think the term we use is like morally gray. Like, I know that's a big thing. When Game of Thrones came out, the show came out, it's like no one's really good, but no one's really like, they're all just self-interest, and it's morally gray. Maybe there are some purely good characters, I'm sure, but and that became very popular because it's like, oh, they're more sympathetic in a way because they're more realistic. And I don't want to stray too much from Tarantino, but I know that was like George R.R. Martin, that's my favorite book series and show series. It's my favorite, let's say, IP, intellectual property. And he was very influenced by Tolkien, but at the same time, he said, well, Tolkien was very black and white. It was, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. And that's great. And it's the same with Star Wars. It's the same with Dune, more or less. But Game of Thrones didn't have that. It was, you know, there were evil Lannisters and there were innocent Lannisters, and there were evil Starks, innocent Starks, and whatever. So that was another part of spaghetti westerns. Like, even the good guys in Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns were like only good by comparison. Like, they were good compared to the villains. But so
So that, I think, alone makes him one of the great filmmakers, where, you know, he was the first one to kind of really make, I mean, and he even talks about that in the Rogan interview where he's talking about like in the 70s, you saw films like Taxi Driver and Apocalypse Now and a lot of films and Dirty Harry where it's like the good guy is still has a lot of issues. I like the fact that first of all it's a good example of him taking something that worked in the past and saying, okay, how can I bring this back? But then also kind of putting his own twist on it. There was an interview, I think right around the time that Django Unchained came out, and the interviewer said, you're kind of like a hip hop artist where you take bits and pieces of different genres, but then when you put all these things together, then it becomes something entirely new, which I think is a good way of describing what Tarantino does.
Definitely.
Well,
even in Django, so I feel like Django had a lot of. I mean, when I was doing my research for this podcast, I feel like I came across the most Django-centric episodes or videos, I guess, which is surprising because he's had 2 movies since Django, right? Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it's not like it's his most recent. Right. Django's all the way back to 2012, I think. Yeah. But it seemed to me that there's just the most discussion about it, and that's probably because of the topic and mainly slavery, obviously I'm referring to. And what he says about Django is a homage. It's his take on the spaghetti western, but in a more a very American view on it, in the sense of, well, we're not just going to talk like cowboys and Indians or whatever it is. We're going to take a very American topic that doesn't get discussed that much, or at least at the time, slavery, and put that at the center of the movie. And while we're on Django, let's just talk about it, because this movie had so much controversy. I'm air quoting here for the people who's listening, which is so dumb to me, because here, and to give context, in a lot of his movies, they say characters, both black and white, say the N-word a bunch, and that I think varies on why. And Django takes place, fucking antebellum Mississippi for a lot of it, not all of it, but like a lot of it, New Orleans, Mississippi. So I mean, it's not very surprising. But obviously there was just like that's coming, that's kind of a precursor, I think, to what we're dealing with now in 2021. So that's 9 years ago or so, where it's like context is dead. It's just the thing itself, which is so absurd to me. And I remember Spike Lee and him, I don't know if they've made up, but they had a big kind of back and forth in the media, and Spike Lee just being absolutely ridiculous. I like a lot of Spike Lee's movies, but he's just fucking wrong on this issue. Even Jamie Foxx was like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, he was saying Spike Lee's like that guy in the neighborhood who has like the manicured lawn and is yelling at all the kids and everything. Right. But anyway, so Django, so one of the things that Tarantino wanted to do with Django was give a young, mainly black boys a cowboy hero, because they didn't have that, because there was John Wayne and there was Dirty Harry. What, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood, I don't know why I was saying Underwood in my head. Clint Eastwood. Obviously, like these kind of heroes and even anti-heroes who obviously a lot of, well, anyone could look up to them, but they were white, and he wanted to give like black boys the black cowboy, and I think that's really like a really cool thing. So I don't even get why he's been, and like he's obviously the hero. He's not even morally gray. Like, he's very much a hero. Django I'm talking about. And like the slave holders and DiCaprio, who's an incredible villain, got totally snubbed at the Oscars, for that role. Like, clearly the villains. Like, I don't understand why, but anyway, Django is so I have my rating. So do you have your favorites for Tarantino movies, and where would you put Django? Because I have it at a 92. Right. So I do a 1 to 99 scale. So if you're in the 90s with me, it's like a 5-star on the scale with half stars. So 92 is very high. It's not as high as some of his other ones, but I have it, at a 92, which basically is a must watch, right? 90 in the 90s for me are a must watch.
Yeah, Django's pretty high for me, but it's probably like more in the 80s for me. I feel like And you know, we don't have to get too much into like being like a movie review thing, but
Oh no.
I just felt like it went on about 40 minutes too long. Like after they kill,
Yeah.
after DiCaprio gets killed, then it goes on even longer and longer. So it's
Sure.
just kind of like, okay. I mean, it was still fun. It was still cool, and it was still very satisfying. But for me, it was the main villain gets killed off. Spoiler alert! A little too early in the film. So.
Yeah, we're gonna have spoilers throughout all this. I mean, the most recent movie is like 3 years old, 3 years old at this point. So,
but I still really enjoy that one. I think if I were to pick a Tarantino movie,
can I guess? Hold on. Can I guess what your favorite is?
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna guess because I have it here.
Yeah.
You're in LA.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's a safe guess. I'm gonna go with Pulp Fiction.
That I was almost gonna pick that one. That was
Reservoir Dogs.
No, I was actually gonna pick Inglourious Basterds.
Oh, all right. I mean, yeah, that's a great one too.
I mean, like, I guess the reason why I'm so hesitant on Pulp Fiction is that's kind of everyone's favorite. But Inglourious Basterds really resonated with me because, like, we've seen historical revisionist films before, but he did it like a kid in a candy store. Like, it was almost like a kid going like, all right, cool, I got the World War II soldiers and I got the Nazis. Yeah, like it was just like I'm going to remove all of the historical, the tragedy and the nuance and just be like, no, like Americans just are cool and they kick ass and they don't care if they die because guess what? They're killing Nazis who are, that's the worst villains you can think of. So there's something really fun and rugged and satisfying about that, where it's not Saving Private Ryan, where it's like, no, this is the horror of war. It's like, no, it's like war is cool. It takes a very irreverent approach to war and into the war film genre, and he does it with so much fun, and it's so bold that like you're just kind of there along for the ride. I've seen some people get kind of nitpicky with it, but it's like, yeah, I don't care.
With Inglourious Basterds?
Yeah, I've seen a few people. I mean, luckily it hasn't really caught on, but it is sort of like, yeah, come on, it's you know what this is.
It's so. First of all, it was really the introduction of Christoph Waltz, at least.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
On that scale, he was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Again, here's another movie where it's like, I don't mean to go back to the political stuff, but like he has Jewish soldiers killing Hitler. Yeah. Like what? Like that's incredible. That's very. I don't see where the controversy comes from in that again, but it has it has 2 scenes in that movie which just like if you just isolated those scenes are some of the most tense, however many minutes that they last. You have the French farm, Christoph Waltz when he first arrives there.
Yeah.
And then the basement or the tavern scene.
Yes.
With the undercover soldiers. What's his name? Who's the British soldier?
Oh, Michael Fassbender.
Fassbender, yeah. Michael Fassbender. Yeah. I'm stuck with names today. That scene's also incredible.
Yeah.
Those alone are basically short films, like shorts. I wouldn't say short, but like those are shorts on their own. Yeah. And then the rest of it's I don't know. I think it's pretty great.
Yeah, and I think also for me, because I'm a huge Hitchcock fan, so this was a great example of Tarantino really doing the Hitchcock thing of like, I'm going to draw out this scene as much as I can and really get as tense as I can and do it very slowly. But like, even though both of those sequences are fairly long, again, just having the guts and the confidence to just draw that out.
They're agonizing.
Yes, and it works, and it works incredibly well. And real quick, so you've probably heard of how Hitchcock and how he does suspense. I'll just do a brief summary of it. So he said, like, real suspense is when you have 2 characters sitting at a table at a cafe in public, and they're talking about something like, talking about sports or politics or whatever. And then the camera pans down and you see that there's a ticking bomb under that table. Yeah.
It's what you and the viewer knows, but not what the characters know.
Exactly. Yeah. So the characters don't know. And so obviously, like, the characters, they don't know what's going on. So they're just going about this normal conversation, but you as the audience, know that the bomb's there and you're freaking out. And then he goes for Hitchcock and Tarantino, I think actually kind of broke this rule. or at least to an extent. But for Hitchcock, he goes, if that bomb blows up and then the people die, it's like then you've just killed everyone's expectations, and then now it's like now they're disappointed. But at the very last second, somebody has to see the bomb and go, "There's a bomb," and then they throw it away, and then everybody manages to survive, but only by the last second. Tarantino actually basically plays that scene out at the beginning of *Inglourious Basterds*, where you have the Jews hiding under under the floorboards there, so that they're there.
Oh yeah, right.
But then so it's going on for a long time. But then he ends up killing the Jews who are hiding. Yeah. So it's like, oh my God. Yeah. So when that happens, it's devastating. But I love the fact that Tarantino's like, I'm gonna go ahead and break Hitchcock's rule, even though Tarantino has a lot of respect and has made numerous tributes to Hitchcock throughout his career. But yeah, I think for me, if I were to pick a favorite film, *Inglourious Basterds*.
Yeah, I think I could make the argument for like 3 or 4 of his movies that are my favorite. I think right now, I think it's Kill Bill for me. I love the genre bending plot. Yep. I'm very partial to katanas and anything kind of Japanese oriented. I just love that style. I love how it's kind of like takes place all over the world and like different parts of the world. The revenge story is great, and so that's a good point. So you brought up he kind of breaks Hitchcock's rule, and I think Tarantino is that blend of homage and paying tribute to directors and actors and genres, but he also is a rule breaker, and that's what makes his film so interesting and different in a way. What else do we have here?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is Tarantino's sort of promise of only making 10 movies.
Oh, yeah.
And so Joe Rogan gave him a lot of pushback on this. And I love that Tarantino's been talking about this for a while, and he's stuck to his guns on this. And so one of the reasons why I find his decision to do this so refreshing is because there's so much of a financial incentive for him. And Tarantino's talented enough. He can easily make another 5-10 movies that are still very good. But I love the fact that there's an artist who's willing to say, I'm going to end my career on a high note. I'm really proud of my career, and I don't want to be one of those guys who looks back and goes, the last 4 or 5 movies I made weren't very good, and they didn't sell well, and the critics didn't like them that much, and this and that. Because that happens a lot. That happens in filmmaking and music and literature, where the last few works of a long career often are not as good as the earlier stuff.
Yeah, and that's his reason for it, is that what he says basically, like, directors only have a maximum 10 movies in them. I don't know if that's statistically true or not. It sounds right. I guess. Like, what directors do you think have 10? I mean, directors have many movies, but 10 great movies? Does Kubrick even have 10? He's probably my favorite director. Does he have 10? I don't know. So that means that he has 9 though now, right? Because I think he counts Kill Bill as 1, because it's supposed to be 1. Because I just counted, that's 10 with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you don't count Kill Bill as 1, if you count it as 2, but it was supposed to be 1 movie. I know that. It had to get cut in 2. So does that mean he only has 1 movie left? Because you're right. The financial incentive is, it's like the slop. It's like, I'm going to see any Star Wars movie. Sure. I'm going to see any, I know for some people, like Marvel, like I'm not a Marvel guy. It's fine. I like some of them. I've seen some of them. Some people, it's like, all right, it's Marvel, I'm going to see it. Like, and that I'm that way with Tarantino. Like, if you put Tarantino's name on something, if he's directing at least, I'm going to go see it. So he could just keep doing that and kind of making shit, and we would just keep lining up to go see it. So I do respect that part of it. At the same time, I don't want to ever stop making movies, because to me, he hasn't made a stinker. Right. Like, I'm serious. Even like Death Proof is, I think, his least favorite movie. I think it would be critically kind of the least acclaimed movie of his. But I really like it. I don't know. It's weird. It's it's original, like stuntman using his stunt car, his like souped up stunt car to murder women. It's like a crazy plot. So I want to go to Austin very soon. I know I've told you that. I've never been to Austin, and that's where a lot of that's where I think the whole movie takes place. No, that's not true. The second kind of part of it takes place in Tennessee, but I guess the first part is all in Austin, and they eat at that bar, the Texas Chili Parlor. I think it's the real name of it. I don't know what it is in the movie, but that's just like one of my favorite all-time movie bars. Like it looks so cool, so I want to go there. So I don't know. I like it, and that's considered its worst.
But if that's his worst, it's kind of like
that's what I'm saying. Like he doesn't have stinkers. Like other people have stinkers.
Right.
I think I don't know about you. I was not a huge fan of Eyes Wide Shut, which was Kubrick's last movie.
Yeah,
it was fine. Something I'd watch again, but I didn't love it.
So a lot of Kubrick's films for me, and I know this is a bit of a tangent, but a lot of Kubrick's films for me, they get better the more I watch them. Like the first time I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, I thought it was really boring, and I kind of liked it.
But did you watch it? Did you watch it when you were like 10?
I watched it actually when I was a little older. I think I was probably like late teens, early 20s. Actually.
Yeah, I think me too, and I didn't really.
But then I watched it. But I've watched it 2 or 3 times since then, and now it just gets better and better for me. Maybe also just be that the more I learn about filmmaking, the more I go, oh, he used a lot of really cool techniques. There are a lot of, and especially the more I learn about film history, I'm like, oh, he was the first one to do that. So the more I kind of appreciate. But I wonder if Eyes Wide Shut will be that for me, because I watched it once, I thought it was okay, weird, kind of creepy, but it was kind of whatever. Then I watched it again, like, okay. All right, I'm starting to get a little more of his technique. I'm starting to see a little more. So,
and don't get me wrong, I would not call Eyes Wide Shut a stinker by any means. Right. But a lot of directors, they put out stinkers, even though they have excellent. Even if most of the movies are excellent. Right. And I think with Tarantino, so but the things that I guess I don't want him to make a stinker anyway. But I don't know, maybe he's not capable of it. It's one of those things. Right. It's like I don't want to see it happen, but I also don't want him to stop if he still has 5 more great movies in him, right? Just because he made this rule for himself. So it is kind of this catch-22 in a way.
But there's this comic book writer who I love. His name is Grant Morrison. He's a Scottish guy who had done a lot of drugs and had a lot of.
What has he written? Has he written anything like any of the big ones or?
Yeah, so he's written a lot of mainstream stuff. He's written like Justice League, X-Men, Batman.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah. I've heard of that. Batman. Yeah. but he's also done a lot of really cool creator-owned stuff where is purely his own intellectual property. Anyway, so. He did a run on Batman, probably 2005 to 2008, something like that. And it was an amazing run. But then he walked away from it. He said, okay, and so Kevin Smith was interviewing him on his podcast, and Kevin Smith is obviously a huge fan of Batman, and so he's like, dude, why are you walking away from Batman? It's such a great series, critics love it, fans love it, it's selling really well. Why are you walking away from it? And Grant Morrison just said, I've told the story I wanted to tell. I've said everything I need to say about this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I got to put my own stamp on the history of Batman, but it's time for me to walk away now. And so I love that, where it's just like the fans love you, the critics love you. It's selling really well. You can do this and it'd be like the smartest thing to do.
You have to have a lot of confidence in yourself, because you could just keep getting that bag, right? You could just keep mailing it in, putting out the slop, which some people do, and that's fine. You got to make a living, right? I get that, but at the same time, if we're looking at it from the artistic standpoint, like we try to do on this podcast, it does take a lot of guts and a lot of balls to walk away from something so lucrative as it's Batman. So he's making the comic, because I'm not a comic guy. I like some graphic novels. I just never really got into comics. So he's making his own what would it be called, own universe, like Batman universe that's not necessarily canon with the movies, or
not even that. He'll just come up with his own series, his own characters, and it's like, okay,
but he can use Batman. He has the rights to do that.
No. He doesn't have the rights to do it. No. So I mean, he was writing Batman for DC. He was the official Batman writer for a bit.
I see.
Then he walked away from it. But it was but yeah, I mean, it's not just comic books. Whether it's a film series or a novel series or a TV series.
Yeah, totally.
Where it's I especially see this with TV series, where it's the first 5 seasons were great. Season 6 was okay. Season 7.
Oh, TV series, they're the worst with it.
Yeah.
They're the absolute worst, because they will. They do the okay, with exception. There are some exceptions. 30 Rock's an exception, where they did stop when it was it's time, we don't want it to. Seinfeld, Seinfeld did too. I think Jerry Seinfeld's famous line was like, "We didn't want to see Kramer's 50th birthday." So there are exceptions that do stop, even though they definitely could keep going. But for the most part, so many shows just keep putting it out there until it's basically unwatchable. And I'm one of those people where whether it's a book or a show or a movie, for me to DNF something, to like not finish it.
Yeah.
It takes I have to finish almost everything. Now I'm not, if there's a 300-page book and I already tell by page 100 that this book just sucks, it's lost my interest, my mind's wandering, I will stop. But with shows, it's like, if I'm going to put in the time to watch 4 seasons, I'm going to watch 7, and I fucking resent you. And I have shows in mind that I've hate watched the last however many seasons. I just want to see how this ends. I just want to see how it ends. Californication is such an example of that. The first 2 seasons of Californication are incredible, but it goes for like 7 seasons. And it's so, I did stop it once. And I was like, I remember the scenes of some shows where I stopped. I'm just like, nope, can't do it anymore. But I did go back, start from the beginning. I saw it, and I was like, all right, great, now it's done. All right, that's it. But so most shows will do that, and it's terrible. So when a creative, an artist, whatever you want to call it, does stop and just pursue something else, I think that's very admirable.
Yeah. And there's something about that sort of integrity of like, I'm going to exert this much control over my career. Because, you know, like a lot of actors I know, for example, Michael Caine, most infamously, he did a string of movies in the 80s. There were, I can't remember what he called it. I think he just called them like the paycheck movies or something, where it's like he started like these dumb comedies.
I am Michael Caine.
Yeah.
And I talk just like this. He's like the king of cameos now, or like small roles. It's just like, we need a well-spoken erudite British man to, I don't know if I'm using that word right, but British man to well, he actually just did that. What was he just in? I
just saw Tenet. He was in that briefly for one.
That was it. Tenet. Yeah, he was in one scene. He was like just at lunch, right? He's just like mysterious British man who a well-traveled Englishman with a great accent. I did see him in a movie once where I love Michael Caine, he's great, but I think he was supposed to be American, and he just like that accent just was not fooling anyone. It's like, if you're there's some people like Sean Connery was the best at this, just keep the accent. We love it. We, especially as Americans, we love it. Don't try and Sean Connery was playing like an Italian or a Spaniard or something once, and he has the Scottish accent, and I love it. Like, I'd rather see him do that than try and put on a Spanish accent. How'd we get on Michael Caine? Oh, Tarantino. And so anyway, so if he does stick to this 10 movie thing, that means he only has 1 left. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood did seem like the sort of movie he would make, because it's very meta. It's LA, it's the new Hollywood, you know, the old Hollywood transitioning, the new Hollywood movement with Rick Dalton. I think his name was it Rick Dalton, or I might be something like that. Yeah, the DiCaprio character represent like the old Hollywood, then like into the new, and with the end of the 60s and the Manson, which basically put the kibosh on the hippie movement. So I don't know what he's going to do for his last one. I don't know if it's going to be assuming this is his actual last one. Is there any, is anything leaked? Is anything out there? Or is it just, has he even started writing anything? Do we know that? They didn't talk about it on Rogan, did he? I thought they might have touched on it.
They touched on it a bit. So he said that he's kind of thought about doing Kill Bill 3.
Right.
And he did say that his last film would be something more of like an epilogue, because he did say like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is sort of like a great send-off. Like, okay, this is my love letter to everything that I love.
Love letter to Hollywood.
Would probably be, I'm assuming, maybe a little more introspective, where it's kind of like, okay, like I said everything to say, now I'm just going to reflect on it a little bit, and then just kind of walk off in the sunset. So I don't know if it's going to be more serious.
I hope it's not. I hope he makes I love it in Kill Bill 3, even though she has killed Bill. So I always said when Kill Bill 2 came out, or was it 1? I can't remember. People were like, oh, 3 is gonna be who was it Cottonmouth? Who played the black woman who she kills in her house? Was that Regina King?
I think so.
No. Yeah, I can't remember. But
yeah,
it's like her daughter. Remember, her daughter's like standing there,
Yeah.
And then she says something like, "When you're of age, come find me," something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess
you're like, oh,
Tarantino wanted
that's
to
gonna
follow.
be the epilogue, like that character finding Beatrix.
Yeah.
Who again? So another thing. So I've touched on how he's made, the basically black revenge fantasy movie and a black cowboy. He made Jews killing Hitler, a revenge on Nazis. And then he made Beatrix Kiddo, who's like this huge feminist kind of icon who takes matters into her own hands. Not that that's been done before, but like literally gets revenge on everyone who wronged her, whether they were men, whether they wronged her in many different ways. Literally came back from the dead.
Yeah.
And so why is he's like kind of reviled in these and again, you and I aren't gonna, we're on the same page with like these progressive spaces that just like criticize everything and they have to find issues with everything. But I just don't get it with him. Like I just don't see it. It makes no, like sometimes I can see where they're coming from. Like I just don't see it here.
Yeah.
I do know, like if you watch Pulp Fiction, there is that scene where he's in it and he's saying the N-word in it a bunch and is kind of cringeworthy now. Yeah. Especially it's like right in front of Samuel L. Jackson, who has been in tons of his movies. It's not like he stopped working with him after that. Right. It does seem kind of over the top, but that's Pulp Fiction. The whole movie's over the top. Yeah. So I could see that. But then if you're watching in the movie, not that it matters, like his character's wife is black in it. Yeah. She's a nurse. I don't know. I guess I could see that. It's like, oh, well, he's just getting away with it's a white guy getting away with saying the N-word because he's playing a character. And right. I mean, Jesus, like if that's really what you're gonna find to criticize him, but for the most part, I just don't get it.
And so Tarantino he mentioned this a while back. I think it was in an interview with Charlie Rose. I think this is back like in the mid '90s. So back when Charlie Rose was interviewing people like that. And Tarantino said he addressed that, and he's like, to me, it would be more offensive for me to play a white guy in Compton or in that part of LA in that world, but he tiptoes. He's still very respectful and make sure not he doesn't say the N-word. He goes, because guess what? Like they're hitmen, they're drug dealers. They say the worst, most horrible things. And I don't want this movie to be a lighthearted movie. Like I want it to hit really hard. Sure. So it's like, like that's how white guys talk with black guys in this world that I've created. Like I'm not saying white people should now have the right to go around using the N-word. Like I'm just saying, like in this world that I've created, and in that sort of criminal world, that's how people talk. Because to me, like it would be more racist to pretend that that's how people don't talk in that world. And I think you even mentioned the quote here where he said like my right as an artist. Where is it? I thought you had it in here.
Oh, me?
Yeah. I thought you included.
Well, I think I can't find it exactly, but
here it is, right there. I see it. As a writer, I demand the right to write any character in the world that I want to write. I demand the right to be them. I demand the right to think like them, and I demand the right to tell the truth as I see they are. All right.
I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah, and that's just a huge testament again of like what the Reckless Muse is all about. It's like, look, you're an artist. You're creating a world, okay? You're the god of this world that you created. So go wild, push the boundaries. And if people don't like it, guess what? They're not part of your world. So ignore them. Like tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, and I think obviously people, critics are gonna, when you're successful, like they're gonna find any reason to criticize you, and that's such an easy one is finding bad words that someone says. It's like the easiest way to criticize someone now. Right. It used to be, because the violence element doesn't really play anymore. That was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. Because there were some very violent movies in the 80s, some of my favorites, especially in the horror genre, but that was a big thing. I feel like in the 90s there was a big movement to censor like rap music and the violent video games, everyone says, like that era. And I think that doesn't play anymore. So now they have to find other ways to criticize. Right. And again, I'm not against criticism ever. Right. I criticize movies all the time. I write critiques, I write reviews. So it's not about criticism. It's about like them, but it's one thing to criticize a movie for even what's said in it. It's another to be like, well, because this was said in it, the director's racist. Like that's a different step, right? It's not, this was said in it, so it's unbelievable, it's boring, it's whatever, it's disjointed. It's like, no, this was said in this movie by these fictional characters. This guy's a bigot, or this was said, and that's where we've gotten, where the art is a reflection of someone's like personal beliefs. Right. And if that's the case, well, in some cases it very much is, but someone who writes novels, like I write novels and a lot of my characters are not good people. Right. Like I don't want them to be a reflection of me as a person. I purposefully write all different types of characters, and it would be like, oh, well, this character said this, like, so Ben must think like that's insane to me that you would draw that conclusion. But those are the conclusions that are being drawn now for all sorts of, I mean, I think directors get it the most.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And, that I think has plagued Tarantino throughout his career, which is a lot of his harshest detractors don't really realize exactly what he's trying to say with his films. So like you said there, where they often tend to take a more superficial look at his work, where it's like, oh, it's a white guy saying the N-word, therefore he's racist. It's like, no, but look at the world that he's created here. None of these are good characters. And so, and obviously, like you said, it's an over-the-top movie. He's not going to hold back with the language, with the violence, with the drugs and sex and all the other weird shit. So when you judge it accordingly, you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see in this world that he's created, a white guy who's friends with criminals uses the N-word casually, even in front of his black friends. And like, yeah, that's just what happens in a Tarantino movie sometimes. Sure. But it's there's too often just like a very superficial understanding of what Tarantino is trying to do in the world that he's making.
So should we discuss, because I know you and I have talked about this, I think off the pod, maybe on the pod, the Bruce Lee thing, while we're on controversies. I mean, it doesn't have to be a long conversation, but it's kind of the most, so this is like, let's say this probably is the most recent Tarantino controversy. Again, I'm doing air quotes here. So I guess I'll summarize it real quick. Whether you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or not, his most recent film takes place in the late 60s, like 69, that time. And Brad Pitt plays a stuntman, and on the set of some movie or show that's being shot, Brad Pitt gets into a fight with Bruce Lee, obviously someone playing Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee comes across as very arrogant. I think the line uses like, my fists are weapons, like he had to get him insured or something like that. And Brad Pitt in a way kicks his ass, which a lot of people took issue with. And that was really it. And when I saw it, I didn't even think much of it. I was like, oh, that's a cool scene. It shows kind of how tough Brad Pitt's character is, because everyone knows Bruce Lee. In the movie, Bruce Lee is famous at the time. Like, it's not like Bruce Lee was a nobody then. Like, he was already the famous Bruce Lee at that time.
The Green Hornet.
So people took issue with that for, I don't even know. So his daughter, I think, came out, and his wife came out and said, basically what you would imagine them saying. It's an inaccurate portrayal of Bruce. And, well, I know, for instance, if you go and watch right now the 30 for 30 Be Water, which I watched a couple of times, I like it. I'm a fan of Bruce Lee. I think he's incredible. They say in the 30 for 30 on ESPN, Bruce Lee could be a very arrogant guy. Like a real jerk. They weren't saying that. They did say the term arrogant. They did say the word arrogant and some other synonyms. And that's what I just saw in the movie. Like, what I don't get is that people, what they do is they take that scene, which was probably 5 to 10 minutes, if that, and it's like, oh, so Bruce Lee was always arrogant. And it's like, no, in this moment he was. In this moment, so one, and on the on Rogan's podcast, Tarantino says, like, so one, Brad Pitt's character tricks him. So it's not even like this was in a boxing ring or anything like that. Like, Brad Pitt his character is like a non-vet, right? Like he's battle tested, and he is a killer. He's like a real killer, not an actor. So he kind of tricks Bruce Lee and defeats him. And not only they're doing a best of 3, it was split 1-1, and then they had to stop for some reason. I forget why. So it's not even like he won, like it was technically tied. Not that that's important, but the fact that it was like, oh, white man beat famous Asian martial artist, that's racist. Like, what are you talking about? Like, first of all, Brad Pitt, he's not real. Like, he's not a real guy. Like, you don't know. It's not like they took someone else from history and was like, oh, this guy would never beat Bruce Lee. It's like, he's not real. He's a fictional character, with this background. And obviously people had a big, to me, it was grasping at straws. It was, well, Tarantino made a new movie. We have to find some cultural commentary, criticism on it.
Right. Yeah, and I love what he said again on the Rogan podcast, which is like, I can understand his daughter being offended by it.
Yeah,
like, that's family fine, but for everybody else, they can suck a dick. and what's funny is that Bruce Lee's daughter actually did release a statement, and it was, I don't blame her for being bothered by it, but she brought race into it though, which is like, of
course, because if she didn't, it wouldn't have gotten as much attention. Yeah,
and it was something like, I'm tired of white men telling us how my father was, or something like that. And it's like, oh, come on, you didn't need to bring
me too, sister.
Yeah, exactly.
White men try to keep me down, us lizard people.
But and there was another controversy around Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I want to real quick. Yeah, it was.
What was it?
So at a press conference, Tarantino and some of the cast members were doing.
Was that Khan? Was that Khan? Is that how you say it?
Maybe it was Khan.
Yeah, Khan. It was about Margot Robbie, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think some journalists raised her hand. She goes, "So how come Margot Robbie, her character, what's her name? Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate was, she's a famous actress, but in the film, how come she gets such a small role? She has very few lines of dialogue." And then Tarantino just immediately said, "I reject your hypothesis." Like, I just loved the fact he just shut her down real quick. Like, no, I'm not going to linger on this. Like, I made the movie that I made.
Yeah,
I like about my creative choices, but don't.
He does that a lot, and I like it because he doesn't take the. He did another interview. I don't know if I put it in our drive, but where it's like, I've already talked about this 100 times. Yeah, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to promote this movie. I forget what it was at the time. Yeah, like, you know the answer. You're just asking me this to get your clicks, basically. Yeah. Like, you're just saying this to get your clickbait, and like, I refuse. Like, I'm not. And I don't think he ever gives in. I don't think he budges on that. And I like that. I'm gonna start saying, "I reject your hypothesis." It reminds me of the I forget who makes that. I think it's Brian Regan. He makes that joke where it's like, politicians can just be like, "Oh, I'm not taking questions this evening." It's like, oh, I didn't know that was an option. Like, I'm not taking questions this evening. Yeah.
No, it's great. No, I think I know exactly which interview you're talking about. Like, it was some British journalist guy who was talking about, like, oh, you talked a lot about what film was, maybe it was Inglourious Basterds, that he was talking about the large amount of violence in it.
Yeah.
He was like, look, I've talked about my views on violence.
Yeah, really. It's like, that's a conversation for Pulp Fiction, not for Django, or like, that's so old. Yeah. But anyway, so the Bruce Lee thing was, I think, so blown, overblown, but
no, absolutely.
Whatever. I think that's really the end of it. It was just someone. It's like, oh, someone was, and like he said, it is understandable. His daughter would be upset, which is fine. Let her write her op-ed. That's okay. But then, of course, when you bring race into it, it gets so many other people involved, and everyone has to give their 2 cents.
It's one of those things where it's like, I can definitely understand people, fans of Bruce Lee, being bothered by it. For example, like, I'm a huge fan of like Jimi Hendrix. So there's gonna be like a Jimi Hendrix. If Tarantino did a Jimi Hendrix revisionist tale in which a young Jimmy Page kicks Jimi Hendrix's ass on stage, I'm like, whoa, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? Like, Hendrix is way better. But at the same time, it's like, well, hold on, this is Tarantino. He's a kid playing with his toys. Like, let him do his thing. Like,
right. So that's part of it. The other part is this: it was not a Bruce Lee biopic, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It was a snippet of someone in a moment when they, I think, like anyone,
Yeah.
like I think that brings this back to your point that you're saying earlier. Like, isn't it more racist or like more bigoted to infantilize an entire group of people, or to make them like all think and act the same? Like, we can all be, not, I won't speak for everyone, but many of us can be arrogant at times. We can be kind at times and sympathetic. We can be assholes. Like, that was just at that moment. So why does that get taken out to mean that, oh, Bruce Lee was an asshole? Like, no, he could be an asshole. We can all be assholes. Like, that's just what he was in that moment. The second is, like, even if it was a Bruce Lee biopic, that's something you can criticize. Like, well, this wasn't accurate because Bruce Lee didn't do all of these things. Like, I'm sorry, there have been things made about people, like, for instance, a pretty big figure in history, Jesus Christ. Like, have you seen The Last Temptation of Christ? Like, he's not portrayed very, he's pretty, he's, Willem Dafoe plays him. I think he's pretty arrogant and like kind of an asshole. It's like, that's a big deal to a lot of people. I'm sure there was uproar about that, but at the same, like, so if you can make it about Jesus Christ for 2 hours, I think you can make it about Bruce Lee for 5 minutes. That he's not like worshipped for those few minutes.
Right.
But anyway, I see, you see that a lot now. It's if there's any not positive, or if a certain person is not completely great or positive or sympathetic, it's like, oh, well, you're being racist or you're being inaccurate. And that, to me, that's just so much worse than being, you know, I don't know if realistic's the right word, but being nuanced, I guess is the right word. So I think we've talked about, unless you have anything else to add about that topic, we can move on. All right, let's move on. I just watched, so, you know, I did want to watch something before we one of his movies before the pod, and I went through all of my reviews, and I, for some reason, I noticed I didn't have a Pulp Fiction review, which is weird because I reference it, and I didn't have a Hateful Eight review. And I went with the Hateful Eight actually because I've seen it the least, I think, out of all of these, or at least compared to Pulp Fiction. I've seen Pulp Fiction probably 10 times, but I have you seen the Hateful Eight, by the way?
This is going to be very embarrassing. I've seen the first quarter of it, the first hour of it.
Okay.
But I haven't seen the full thing though.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about it anyway.
Go
just for a few minutes, because I remember, compared to Death Proof, this is probably his other least popular movie. I remember not loving it the first time I saw it. It's very long. It's 168 minutes. So it's long. I usually watch most movies broken up anyway. I just watch like an hour a night. Usually I, you know, watch 3-4 movies a week like that. So that doesn't really bother me, but I get if you had to sit for 168 minutes, that is a pretty long time. I also didn't like that. I was like, we just got Django in 2012, which was antebellum, like antebellum America. This was antebellum America. This was post Civil War, but it was still probably 1870s, 1890s maybe. Like it was after the Civil War very much, but it was still like people in the Civil War were still very much alive. It was revolvers, and basically it was that kind of environment where it was like, I want something different. I wanted, you know, he's been all over. He's been like contemporary LA, Japan, you know, and that was kind of like, all right, fine, because it takes years. It's not like he's coming out with a movie every year. So I was kind of annoyed with that, whatever. And it's not a solo location shot movie, but vast majority of it is one location, which is the Minnie's Haberdashery, which is this isolated, I don't know, I guess a haberdashery is kind of like, it's not really a hotel because there's not like separate rooms. So it's kind of like a bed next to the kitchen and then a bed over there and a fireplace and a bar, which is kind of cool. But I rewatched it. I finished it last night. I liked it a lot more than I remember. It's really, the acting, I think, is what makes it stand out. Like it's really, really good acting. I should have gotten the actors' names, everyone's name. I mean, I know a lot of them. Jennifer Jason Leigh is great. Samuel L. Jackson's great. The guy who plays Chris Mannix. So if you've seen the movie, you know who that is. He's kind of like the Southerner who's the new sheriff of Red Rock. He's got a great accent. I know he's in some other stuff.
Walter Goggins?
Yes, Walter Goggins. That's it. Tim Roth, who is really good. And Michael Madsen, who's in like all of Tarantino's movies. He didn't have that much. He had a pretty small role. I kind of wish he was more involved. And then Channing Tatum has a great, it's not a cameo, but it's a very small role, but he's got a really good accent in it too. But anyway, again, this was like one of those movies where in the Tarantino filmography, it's not held up very high. And again, that's a very high standard. Like his worst is even better than 99% of movies. But I very much enjoyed it compared to what I remembered. The acting's fantastic. It's violent, obviously, but it's not like Django violent.
Right.
And so if you're out there and you've been watching Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill and Glorious Bastards over and over again, give Hateful Eight another watch, because it was much better than I remembered.
Right.
There are a couple strange instances and like not a plot hole, I would say, but something that I think, it's an old movie now. Basically, well, you haven't seen it all, so I'm not gonna. Go
ahead and spoil it. I don't care. I don't care about.
Well, no, they should have killed a character after another character dies.
Okay.
But I'll say, which is probably just spoiling it without spoiling it. But
that's right.
And I was like, what? Why would they? Well, okay, so I'll say, why would they keep her alive? Why would they keep Jennifer Jason Leigh alive after? And at the end, they kind of answer it, which I think they should just said that earlier, I guess, and it would have made more sense why they decide to kill her the way that they do. But let's move on from that, because you haven't seen it in a while or haven't finished it. So Joe, you should go and watch The Hateful Eight. When you get the chance. It's a very good movie. I gave it, because we promote our own work on this podcast also. I gave it an 85, which is a very, very high score. It's good. Low for a Tarantino movie. But that's still that's a 4.5. Yeah, definitely.
Real quick, you're gonna like this. When you come to visit LA, I live in Highland Park, Northeast LA. Like probably about 3/4 of Reservoir Dogs was shot there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
very
much
cool.
Like a lot of the car chase scenes were filmed right down the street. The warehouse, where much of the film takes place. That's no longer there. It's just a parking lot. That parking lot's right down the street. The bowling alley is only like 10 minutes away from here. They shot a lot of it.
That's cool.
A lot of Reservoir Dogs.
Where did he where did he live? Was he like a certain part of LA, or was he all over?
I know that I think he grew up originally he was born, I think, in Tennessee, but then he moved to LA.
Oh yeah. He
moved to LA when he was a kid. And I believe he lived.
Did he live in like Torrance? Yeah.
Torrance, which is a little more south.
Definitely. But he didn't some directors, it's not just a city necessarily. Sometimes it's like a neighborhood or something. Like Marty, like Scorsese, he does a lot in like, it was like Little Italy, right? Like that was his, or it wasn't Brooklyn. I think it was Little Italy. But I guess it's not true. It's just New York City for the most part with him. But okay, so he didn't have like an affinity for Highland Park. It's just probably where he found somewhere to shoot, or like
I think so.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe at the time Highland Park just was not a very populated place. Now it's kind of like a budding hipster paradise. But at the time, I guess it was just kind of like it's a small, average-looking neighborhood. Also, like 2 blocks from here, there's an alley. There's a small little alley where one of the characters. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but where one of the characters gets killed. Yeah, same thing. It's like a 3-minute walk from here.
Sweet.
So me and my friends, like, we want to watch that movie again. Like, oh yeah, that's right down the street. Yeah, I know where that's at. So
that is cool. That's one of the perks of living in LA. We don't get that in South Jersey that often. Actually, I do think apparently, I don't remember this happening, but apparently, was that new zombie movie that just came out? The one in Vegas. Yeah, a bunch of that was shot in Atlantic City, I think.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was like right here. Yeah. Obviously, it takes place in LA. They wouldn't have it take place in AC, but a lot of that takes shot in Atlantic City, or some. I wouldn't say a lot of it. Some part of it was shot in AC.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But other than that,
all right,
there's not much to do in South Jersey.
There's stuff to do. I just don't think it's a film capital.
Right,
Some stuff has been filmed in, a few things have been filmed in a couple of the towns. You need like a small town feel. Like I know there's this town called Hamilton, which is kind of like in the dead center of South Jersey. I think some things have been shot there.
Yeah.
But besides that, not much.
Yeah.
Also, you're not going to get any tax benefits in New Jersey because they tax the shit out of you here. Like California.
Yeah, I know.
Everything's going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So should we talk about, I have some notes here. Again, this is going to be more of like the movie making, which you have more experience with than I do. So one about his storytelling.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's not really movie making, it's more movie writing, which you also have more experience. But so he's kind of known for non-linear storylines and intertwining storylines. Pulp Fiction's a great example of this. Even Hateful Eight, which I didn't necessarily remember. Flashbacks, flash forwards. Alternate storytelling, like of course Inglourious Basterds being the most famous. Hitler dies, spoiler alert. And I think that's a very cool thing. I also kind of do that in some of my write for one of my books. I don't necessarily know why. I just want the world to be different, so I wrote that 9/11 never happened, and that was in my first book, and just how the world is kind of different then, how some of the same things do happen, but just how fundamentally different some other things are. So I've messed around with that stuff too. Have you ever done any of that for any of you write screenplays, right?
Yeah. No, I'm usually pretty linear with my storytelling. But then again, I usually don't write exactly in the way that Tarantino does. So for him, he basically writes novels. Like he'll write like 200, 300 words. I'm sorry, 200, 300 word, 400 word. I keep saying pages.
Yeah.
Not words. Yeah, he writes half a page. That's a script. No, 400 page scripts, and they're basically like novels. That's definitely a habit I need to do more of. I mean, maybe not writing to that length, but the idea of like fleshing out the character so much, where you can kind of pick and choose the elements that you want to incorporate. And then I think that lends itself more to wanting to play with time and story structure more, where it's like, okay, like I can bring this character's past up, I can bring their future up over here, and I can play with time a little more. But yeah, he for those of you who aren't familiar, usually the rule of thumb in the film industry is that 1 page of a screenplay roughly equals 1 minute of screen time. So when Tarantino writes a 400 page screenplay, that's that roughly equates to a 400-minute film.
Right. And then that's getting cut a lot.
Right. Yeah.
I would love to see his director's cuts.
Yeah.
Which probably are like 3 hours minimum. That's another thing. So his dialogue obviously is, one of his most notable characteristics for his films. And I found it funny. I think it was a Howard Stern interview where he brought up ad-libbing, and he was like, do you let your characters ad-lib? And it's like, not really. Like, I write my dialogue for a reason, and if someone doesn't and it works, he'll take it. He's not like he's not stubborn where it'd be like, oh well, I didn't write that, so I'm not putting, even if it's better. Like, no, he will. But I think most people know at this point, like, he's gonna write probably better than anything that you're gonna improvise. Right. Yeah. And then what was the other note here? So I don't know if we have to talk about the violence. We can. His movies are violent, if you didn't know that. But like, okay, let's talk about it a little, because they're not just violent. They are, it's violence with sometimes like a purpose. I think one of the best examples of this is the final showdown in Django, where it's like, it's cartoonish. Blood doesn't even work that way necessarily. They're like glob. It's not even like blood splatter. It's like globs. And my favorite was where, if you remember at the end, Django, he's up at the top of the steps in the big house. And I don't know if it's with a rifle or a pistol, but he shoots DiCaprio's sister. who's just unarmed,
Yeah.
and she goes flying,
Yeah.
like as if you could see the wire
Yeah.
attached to the actress's back. She gets yanked.
Yeah.
And it's not like he was a couple feet with a shotgun. These are the top of the steps with a rifle or pistol. And like, he knows what he's doing. That's not, he's not trying to say like, oh no, that's realistic. He like consulted some ballistics expert. Like, no, that's absurd. And that's the point.
Right.
Like, here, this violence is proving a point, and it's the apogee of the revenge fantasy. That's what it is. The same as at the end of Inglourious Bastards, where is it not Eli Roth? It's the other Roth. What's his name? He plays the Bear Jew in the Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah,
it is Eli Roth.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim Roth. It's Tim Roth and Eli Roth. Yeah, I always get those names confused. Not them. They're very different looking. Eli Roth and the other, I forget the other guy's name. But they're just like filling Hitler with bullets, like Swiss cheese, and it's funny, and that's the point. It's not just like they went up and put a bullet in the back of Hitler's head. Like they fill him full of lead, and that's the point of it. And that's not even something new. Like, if you know, I remember I learned this in freshman year of high school. I took film, and it was like, it doesn't matter, but it was like a class you take like senior year, just because it's one of those classes. I took a freshman year for some reason. I love film. I remember learning Bonnie and Clyde, which was one of these kind of new Hollywood movies. I think it's 67. I watched it, I think, last year. A very good movie. And the way that they kill Bonnie and Clyde in the movie, like, it serves a purpose. It's outlandish. I don't know if they actually died that way. I know there was a shoot and everything. Maybe they did. Maybe it was that brutal, but it goes on for a long time. It goes on for a long time. And the director, you could take directive liberties and not show it. You could show the guns just shooting. We know that they'd be dead. You could cut to black and hear the screams and the shooting. But like, they show all of it, and there's a reason for that. It's to show you won't get away with it, right? Like, we don't want to, as much, because they were folk heroes, and as much as, and they did this with mafia movies too. They made a rule, and I don't know if it's an unwritten rule or what. It's like, the mafioso has to die, because we can't have 15-year-olds leaving the theaters saying, I want to be that. Because in the end, they're bad dudes as much as we like them. Like Scarface dies, right? Tony Soprano probably dies. We don't know exactly. Like, the mafioso has to die. With few exceptions. I mean, Goodfellas, Hank Hill, like, he doesn't die in real life, and that is based on, you know, his life, so they couldn't kill him. That really wouldn't make sense unless it was an alternate history movie, which it wasn't. But so anyway, so it's not like Tarantino's doing anything that hasn't been done before there. So you can't really, like, and then if you're going to criticize him for that, it's like, oh, why is it so violent? It's like, yeah, but it's not just gratuitous violence. It's to prove, not to prove a point, to hit home a point, I should say.
Right. And it's often very cathartic, because I mean, it's like, no decent person is going to cry at night because some slave owners got shot up, or because some Nazis got shot up. Like, no, it's like, it's cathartic. It's like, I'm finally seeing these bastards get what they fucking deserve. Also, with the Inglourious Bastards, I watched an interesting video essay on the role of violence in Tarantino's films, and it was talking about the movie theater, the big climactic movie theater scene. So the movie that the Nazis are watching, it's that Nazi guy who's celebrated, and he's going around and he's killing all these Americans. Exactly. And the audience is clapping and cheering and laughing at him killing Americans. But then they all get killed in Hitler and all the people in the audience. They all get killed. And then now us as the audience is laughing and cheering because those Nazis are getting what they deserve. So it's almost and there's also the scene where the French lady where she puts that other reel of film, the footage in, and it's her laughing over the smoke and everything, and she's laughing at the Nazi audience as they're getting shot up and the theater's burning. But in a way, it's almost Tarantino laughing at you, saying, "Hey, you love violence just as much as I do. Don't criticize me. Like, you love this. You love seeing all the bad guys get shot up and blown up."
Right. Oh shit. Does he say that, or is that like a study of it? Like, is that him?
No. Somebody did a video essay on YouTube about it.
Because I never realized that, but that definitely makes sense. It's like, and it's not a wagging the finger.
Right, exactly.
That it's like, don't hide it. Like, you like this stuff. That's why you're here. That's why you come to these movies.
Right, exactly.
His famous line was like, people come to a Tarantino movie for the violence. It's like, you don't go to a Metallica concert and ask the fuckers to turn down the music. Like, like that's a big part of it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, one of the main draws. Let's see.
Anything
else?
Quick, I just want to bring this one quote. So this is Roger Ebert.
Who's that?
He's that one guy. No. Is that a Yelp reviewer?
Someone's gonna kill me for that. Like, yes, I know Roger Ebert is, you idiots.
No, so he Roger Ebert wrote a 4-star review for Pulp Fiction, and
that's his highest, right? He only gave 4.
Yeah, only 4. And he wrote a terrific description of Tarantino here. It's that very lack of caution and introspection that makes Pulp Fiction crackle like an ozone generator. Here's a director who's been let loose inside the toy store and wants to play all night. Like, I love that description, not just of Tarantino, but the idea of, I think that's such a great ideal for an artist to strive towards, of like, look, I'm going for broke here. Like, this is what I want to do, and don't hold me back. And I think Tarantino knows that, and he can be a little arrogant in his interviews. I think he definitely knows that he's talented, but I'm willing to allow it, because it's like, you are pretty great. Like,
he's like, yes, he's being arrogant, but one, it's like totally deserved. Two, it's like, a lot of times I feel like his arrogance is coming out because of the constant criticism that is like not even good criticism, right? Like, it's not really substantive. It's kind of the same schlock over and over again. So I wouldn't even say necessarily arrogant. It's kind of like frustration, or like, all right, yes, my movies are violent. Yes, they say bad words. Like, don't watch them. Like, you don't, like, no one's making you watch. This isn't, Clockwork Orange, where you got your eyelids like pulled back. Like, it's like, you don't have to watch it.
Right.
So let me see. Could you give people, the people, and that's who our listeners are, the people, everyone likes a good list. Well, what do you have, a top 3?
Top 3 Tarantino movies?
Yes. I could, like, top 5 I think would be too much, like, because top 3 makes it a little more difficult.
Right. Okay, I think I can do a top 3
in order. If you could do in order.
So this is my favorite, or ones I think are his best.
Go do favorite.
I'll do favorite. Okay. I'll do,
like, if you could only watch 3, watch 3 Tarantino movies again, what would they be?
I'll do Inglourious Basterds, Pulp Fiction, and I'm gonna pick Jackie Brown.
We haven't talked about Jackie Brown, which is probably the least talked about of his movies.
I think so. And I watched it for the first time a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was interesting because it's one of it's probably Tarantino's most tame film. It's definitely not as over the top as a lot of his other films, but it also demonstrates that even when he's doing stuff that's more plot oriented and more character and oriented, that he's still very adept at that, where it's not like, I wonder if there's kind of this mentality of like, Tarantino's not Tarantino unless there's lots of guns and blood and stuff. Like, no, he's actually good at handling multiple characters.
That's true, because it's not a really violent movie, right?
A couple of death scenes, but even then, it's barely
especially
R-rated.
For his movies.
Exactly, for him comparatively. But there are a lot of really fun character moments. It's all these characters kind of bumping into each other, all these different plot lines, careening into each other. It's definitely much more subtle film compared to a lot of his other films, but I like that it still came off as like, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to, every one of these characters has a distinct plot, distinct arc, and a distinct goal. And watching them.
Well, it's his. So I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's right.
So, like, and I didn't realize this till recently. So Jackie Brown is I gave it an 86. So it's very high.
Yep.
It's probably one of the least viewed for me that I've seen. It has Pam Grier, who is fantastic, and it stars Pam Grier. And so, like, someone broke this down for me. I mean, someone, it's not like it was for me, it's a YouTube video, where it's a lot of his, like we said, it's homages to genres and subgenres, and this was blaxploitation, right? Kill Bill is like a mix of the kung fu genre, the hero's journey. Pulp Fiction is neo-noir. Django, obviously spaghetti western. So and he's hitting all, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't know what that would be. That's just kind of his like culmination of of
That's
his
more
love for Hollywood.
Love letter.
But anyway, so Jackie Brown is that it's his kind of an homage to blaxploitation movies, which is, I think, this overlooked area of cinema that we could do more exploring into. But I saw it. I rewatched it probably 2-3 years ago. It is probably the most different out of it. Now that you say that, like, it's like you kind of forget about it, to be honest. And I think it's because it's, like you said, it's the most tame of his movies. But very good. So your third was Jackie Brown, you said. So you went you went Glorious Bastards, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown. Interesting.
What about you?
Mine are like the more basic bitch ones, but so my one is going to be Kill Bill. I love it. I just love the style. 2, Inglourious Bastards. And 3 for me, it's close between Pulp Fiction and Django, but that's not fun. So I'm gonna pick. I'll go with. I think I'm gonna go with Django because a close fourth of Pulp Fiction, because I love because Leo is just he's so good in it. He's unbelievable in that movie. I mean, the whole thing. And another thing about Django that I didn't realize was the Christoph Waltz character. He is way more subversive than I had ever noticed watching the movie. Again, I only gleaned this from YouTube videos, where so in Django, DiCaprio, he's a Francophile but doesn't speak French. They have the big Greek revival, Italianate homes and mansions, and it's the illusion of sophistication, and that illusion is based off of someone like Christoph Waltz, who really is a man of the world, speaks many languages, very articulate. And how, if you watch that movie, next time you watch it, try and focus on his character, how he dumbs himself down for them to play the role of the European from, the motherland, the old continent. But then there's that moment where he breaks. And I always remembered that moment. It's when a woman, I think it's like a side character, is playing the harp, but she's playing, I think it's Bach or Beethoven. It's one of them. It's a German guy, right? And he's German. And he's so upset that these racist assholes would be playing, someone from his motherland, from Germany. That he snaps and he's like, please stop playing. I think it's Beethoven, but it might be Bach. I can't remember. Like, please stop playing him. Like, stop. Because and he couldn't hold it in any longer, that he had to put on this act for these racist assholes. But anyway, that was something. It's like, that's the thing about movies that you go and you watch YouTube. It's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Like, I never noticed that. Like, obviously you could tell he was playing the part of a fellow white person, right, to get in the good graces of these other white people, but I didn't put that together, like the kind of the European side of it. Which is very interesting.
Oh, interesting. I'll look into that.
It's very, very cool. I'm like, oh, it was one of those oh shit moments. But anyway, so those are my top 3. Anything else we need to discuss before hanging it up?
No, I think I've said pretty much everything I need to say about Tarantino for now. But I'm sure we'll bring him up at some point as well.
Definitely. He's our second. I mean, this is our 4th episode. This is our second, I guess. I don't know if profile is the right word. We'll think something from it. Our homage, our reckless salute to an artist, Lenny Bruce. So if you haven't listened, listen to episode 1. It's just Joe and I in that episode 2. We talk about a bunch of different things, but one of them is Lenny Bruce, why we love him. And I put Lenny, the movie, by the way, on my watch list. I'm going to watch that soon.
Okay, cool.
And the second is Tarantino. So that's up there. We thought he deserved it. We love you, Quentin. You're the man. And that's it. We should name, this is the Reckless Musecast. I'm Ben DeLessio, and I'm with my co-host, Joe Garza.
Hey, everyone.
All right, so stay reckless, Joe.
All right, stay reckless, Ben. Bye, everyone.